Do you have fully vacant units on your property that you have mothballed until next semester? If you do, I bet you've thought to yourself, we should list those on Airbnb for game day weekends or for parents visiting their kids. Maybe you're in a college town like Austin or Raleigh or Tallahassee, and your city has large festivals and not enough hotel rooms. You know you could lease those units on a nightly or a weekly basis. Providing short-term rentals on platforms like Airbnb can provide a great source of ancillary income. But it takes it takes a lot of organization. There's the additional setup of providing linens and coffee makers and all the little things that a short-term tenant will expect. Then there's the regulatory and tax issues that could require additional work. More importantly, there's the time and labor to market on all the multiple platforms, handle the reservations and cancellations, the cleaning, and then there's the bookkeeping. All of this turns into a big distraction from the main job at hand, which is operating and leasing your property. That's where Vector Travel comes in. These guys know the short-term rental industry and they know how to relieve all of those burdens from the property manager. And best of all, they've become experts in how to do that with student properties. They understand the complexity of mixing travelers with college students. They know it so well, they can quickly identify if a student property is not going to be a good fit for their program. So if you have vacant units, reach out to Vector Travel and have them do a free, no obligation assessment to determine if enrolling your vacant units in their program will be beneficial. Go to vectorstays.com/SHI. Fill out a quick form to receive more information. You will also get the first month's service fee waived by going to that specific landing page. Again, that's vectorstays.com/SHI. Welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we're putting you in touch with the people who bring student housing to life. I'm your host, Wesley Dees, and joining me today is one of those people. If you're a new listener to our audience and to our podcast, you may not have heard this voice yet because it's been a while. But he is one of our co-hosts, Ken Miller. Ken, how are you doing?
Hey, Wes, I'm doing well, and I promise I've not been in a bunker anywhere. I've actually been working. I didn't take the pandemic off.
You had a busy 2021, to say the least. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but yeah, for those that don't know Ken, he's been involved in the student housing world for quite some time. You were with Peak and. Who are some of the other companies you've been with?
I started my student housing career with Ambling way back when, yes.
And done everything from the information technology side of our business to actually leading up operations.
Yeah, about a little over 28 years now of experience in IT all the way through to the operation side and everything in between, and then somehow made the crossover to the vendor world. One of those bridges led me there.
It's amazing how many folks, and I always tell people, like, sometimes we were treated like the redheaded stepchildren of the multifamily world, and it's kind of funny seeing how things have come around. Where, because I always used to tell people that the multifamily world, I know there's a lot of people that work hard in it, but for the most part, when you compare it to student housing, it's just a different pace, and it's a pace that I find quite boring, just to be completely honest. And I know that's going to offend some people, but it's just I'm student housing through and through, and it's funny hearing from vendors who have recruited out of multifamily, come back and say, we're really focused on recruiting out of student housing because those are the folks that are being innovative and thinking differently, thinking outside the box. And, I think it just goes along with what we've experienced in our industry. So it doesn't surprise me that you've found your way to the vendor side of things. But let's talk about that. I mean, you were last time you were on the podcast, you were VP of sales with Buyers Access. And back in December, you guys had a little bit of a merger acquisition thing happen. Why don't you catch the audience up and tell us what you're up to now?
Sure. So, still with a group purchasing organization. It turns out that Omnia Partners was really looking to break into the multifamily space, and that would include conventional, affordable, and student. And so they, back last summer, they purchased Pass Purchasing Solutions out of Dallas. That was our closest competitor on the buyer's access side. Pass has been around for about 32 years. And buyer's access came out of a sort of an incubation of from Aimco years ago.
Isn't that crazy?
Then, yeah,
I mean, how many
benches of them have
these supply companies have come out of, and I mean, both service as well as product supply have come out of some type of incubator with the property management company.
Absolutely, and a lot of prop tech happened that way too. Yeah. So we'd been around for about 38 years, and so Omnia Partners made their first acquisition, Pass, and then in November of 2021, they acquired us. And so collectively, we are now the multifamily housing sector for Omnia Partners within their private sector business. And Omnia is a very large company based in Franklin, Tennessee. They had a very big focus in the public sector, which is K through 12, and then higher ed. So there's a student housing connection there. They do a lot of business with colleges and universities across the country. And then on the private sector side, they began building that organization up through acquisition and others, and along the way picked up 400 of the Fortune 1000 companies that are doing business through there. So between public and private and multifamily housing, about 20 billion passes through the group purchasing organization on a yearly basis. So good sized company, probably close to 300 employees, and we're now all one big family, which is great. And we've been able to consolidate into one entity. They brought us, all along, which was great. And we're busy out there now introducing the multifamily housing world to the new buyer's access and Pass, which is now known as Omnia Partners.
So break that down a little bit, because it's probably half with our audience may know what a purchase partner is. So if I've got a project that is happening, for example, here's a common one that happens. Something changes with the fire code, and all of a sudden you've got to add fire extinguishers to all of your units, inside the units. That's a big number. Do I just call you at Omnia Partners and say, hey, go source me 150 fire extinguishers, or how does Omnia, how do your clients utilize Omnia Partners in a situation like that?
Well, you actually, in that particular scenario, you would call us, but there's a kind of a precursor step, and that is become a member of a group purchasing organization, i.e. become a member of Omnia Partners. Mm-hmm. And there's no cost to join. There's no ongoing cost. Our revenues are derived from the supplier side of the equation. So we're able to bring the right suppliers, they have the right services, the right products into the situation with the multifamily or student housing owner operator. And it allows us to be in a position where we can make recommendations that are sound. We've got our pulse on the business of both supply chain issues that we'll talk about in a moment, but also just the everyday blocking and tackling within what happens with a supplier, such as a maintenance, repair, and operating supplier, a paint supplier, flooring, etc. We can bring all those folks to bear. So within our group purchasing organization, we have relationships with about 150 supplier partners, and those those supplier partners then provide goods and services to student housing operators, multifamily owner operators, et cetera. And if you have that fire extinguisher project that you need, we could do it at one single property, maybe an entire portfolio, a region, et cetera. And we can bring those special discounts, some line item pricing to bear, and go above and beyond what an owner operator may be able to get on a bulk rate if they were just to call the supplier directly. So yes,
Okay.
that's one example that we do. We've also involved in renovations. So there's all those things that happen, whether you're doing 1 or 2 units at your property, or you're doing 30 or 40 or 50, or you're completely remodeling, rehabbing an entire student housing facility. Either one of those can come into bear, and we can help with those particular projects as well. So it's sourcing suppliers, bringing line item discounts to bear, finding rebates that may not necessarily be readily available in the marketplace, and then marrying up those suppliers with the owner operator to achieve the goals and objectives that they have for procurement.
So all of that is the main reason that back in the fall, when Rich Kelly at Interface Conference Group reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to enlist you for help on LeaseCon, TurnCon. Give some ideas on some good panels." And we said supply chain is going to be a big one. It was a big one this past turn, and it's going to continue to be that way, just based on what was going on with the pandemic and that type of thing. And I knew no one has their pulse on that more so than you at that time. and so I reached out to you and said, "Hey, let's put a panel together, and give me some ideas of folks that we need to talk to." And you came up with a wonderful panel, and then you couldn't be on it because of this merger acquisition with Omnia Partners. But it was still a great panel. We had Lisa Dillon from University Furnishings. We had Brad Chandler with Facilgo. We had Wade Griffin from Sherwin-Williams. And then also on the technology side, in addition to Brad, we had Michelle Wilcox with Turnable. And then from the operator side, it was Crystal Coleman, who's the VP of business operations at Scion. So it was a really, really good panel to give all those different perspectives, both on the supply chain as well as labor challenges. And if you didn't get to go to TurnCon, make sure that you go next year, because there's topics like that, panels like that you're just not going to get the insight anywhere else except here on Student Housing Insight. So
very true.
We actually, at that point in time, the Omicron variant was just getting up and started. This whole Ukraine thing was kind of on, you could see it showing up on a roadmap to some type of geopolitical catastrophe, right? But it wasn't, it wasn't in, it wasn't on the news every night. And no one certainly, I don't want to say no one, no one was really thinking about what could that potentially end up causing with supply chain and that type of thing. So, moving into February, where we saw that, I started hearing about, some of these manufacturing plants that were in Ukraine that were causing issues. And then, of course, just fuel pricing going up.
I was about to say, Wes, I have never in my life paid $5.05 a gallon for diesel fuel. And I bought a truck specifically to get that better gas mileage. It's a Ram 1500 Eco Diesel. It gets 26 miles a gallon on the highway. But it's stopping a lot more frequently at gas stations these days.
Well, yeah. And
to fill up at $5.05 a gallon.
Yeah, that reminds me, I've got to stop by Sam's Club on the way home to fill up, because that's where I get gas at now.
Yep.
It's typically about 20 cents cheaper than the other gas stations around. And so, I'm seeing that, and I'm thinking, okay, what is this going to end up being like for turn this year? And what is it going to end up doing with budgets this year? And so I reached out to you and I said, "Hey, I think we need to get the crew together from our meeting in December, and let's kind of get an update and do a 2.0 to that panel." Wade from Sherwin-Williams wasn't able to join us, unfortunately, due to some travel, but we did get both Brad and Lisa on it. And then also from Omnia Partners, you said, "Look, Wes, I know you think I'm the man when it comes to this, but we've actually got the man here at Omnia Partners that you need to talk to, which is Jonathan. And can you tell a little bit about Jonathan's background and what he does for
Yeah.
Omnia Partners?
Yeah. So definitely bringing in this topic requires a subject matter expert. And although we've all lived it on the operations side in some capacity over the years, I don't think any of us have been quite this stunned, but Jonathan Ovanis is our subject matter expert within Omnia Partners. Jonathan came over in the Buyers Access acquisition, so I had the great opportunity and privilege to work with Jonathan for the last 3.5 years prior to that acquisition. And prior to he was at Buyers Access for probably 8 years or so, but prior to that, he was with HD Supply and ran a division within HD Supply. So he's had his nose and pulse to supply chain for close to 30 years, and so having him on was very good to be able to tap into his knowledge base of not only what's happening now, but looking back, what's happened over the years. He can take his collective experience and bring it to bear. And then, of course, we tried to bring it home too to say, all right, what does this mean for student housing? Luckily or unluckily, the supply chain problems that we're having in the country and across the globe affect every facet of multifamily housing, whether it be affordable, conventional, or student. So it doesn't pick one person to pick on or one area to pick on.
No, it doesn't.
And Jonathan gave us a good sort of overview of what's happening in that area. So I think our listeners will be happy to hear a little bit about that. But by the same token, we know that we can't go into tons and tons of specifics because things are changing so rapidly. So, if we would have had this thing 6 months ago, we'd have talked about wood being so expensive. Now we're talking about gasoline prices and diesel prices, and that's driving a lot of things up. But what also has occurred is this whole labor shortage thing. And everybody's talked about the Great Resignation and all that kind of fun thing. But more importantly, I think it's been more a situation of not people's reluctance to go back to work, but the fact that they're not incentivized to do so. And so that's put a really big strain on the labor market. So as we're getting materials in, now there's a downstream problem because no one's there to, not everything's robotic, so not everything can be put together by machine. So there's a lot of people that are necessary to get the pieces and parts assembled on an appliance, get that appliance shipped, put that appliance on a truck, get it delivered to its end place to be sold somewhere. So we're seeing just a lot of different things happen all at the same time. It's like that movie, The Perfect Storm, only we're not stuck on a boat with a lot of fish.
That was a scary movie, honestly. Any movie where George Clooney dies in the end. Sorry if I ruined it for you, but that's always disappointing. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things I want to say about it, and I will say not everything that our panel had to say was bad. I mean, Lisa gives an update. Lisa gives an update on port fees going down, and so that's helping. But at the same token, you've got gasoline going up, you've got price of install going up because of the labor. So, and the more and more I went through this interview with them, the more and more I realized this is less about just turn and more so on what's happening with our budgets, because many people are in budget season right now. If you're on a fiscal budget that reflects the academic calendar, and you're trying to get those put away and so that they can be approved sometime in June or July, and be able to hit the ground with them in August. And we could see some significant inflation continue to happen through the rest of the year, and how that's going to end up affecting things. And we talk a little bit about it. I've got some of these same members coming back to talk about on an upcoming Shop Talk conversation, which, if you don't know what Shop Talk is, it is the student housing industry monthly call that was started back in the pandemic. If you listen to the episode with Miles Worth, we talked a little bit about Student Housing Insight, taking that in-house to provide administrative support and some leadership and just content creation for that monthly call. If you want more information on it, you can go register to get on the email list at shoptalk.info and get more information there. We'll send you an invite to register each month if that's something that you want to be on. I highly, highly, highly recommend being involved in it. If you're a property manager or above, it's something that you should be involved with. But I am looking at having them back on a specific segment to go over exactly kind of line item by line item of, hey, here's what you can expect on, plumbing expenses of what can, what's going to increase as far as those supplies, what's going to happen with cleaning supplies. And hopefully we can get a lot more granular with that. We touch on that a little bit in this interview, but we definitely want to get into that when we do the shop talk. So anyway, with that being said, I want to go ahead and get over to the interview, and then we'll have some takeaways on the other side. Sound good to you?
Hey, it sounds great. And I know there's a lot of folks that are anxious to hear what was said. Like I said, real quickly, just to kind of follow up on that Perfect Storm movie, is not only were we affected by the supply chain issues and the rising fuel cost, but then you had, as you mentioned, inflation. And we'll talk a little bit about that during the actual interview with the folks as well. But inflation, all this hit at one time. So, when that happens, sometimes you do have to run and hide, but hopefully that, like we said earlier, all the news is not bad. There is some great news here. There's some good information. I think Lisa did a good job talking about that, and you'll see where she's kind of, I won't say guaranteeing things, but at least being able to be in a position where if charges do get caught in and they go down, hey, she's willing to work with people. And I think that's what supplier partners are all about, is we're not trying to game the system or get people to pay more. We're trying to do the right thing and find the great deals for everybody. And I think you'll find that all these folks on the call are very much at their heart concerned about the owner operators that are out there that we represent.
Yeah, you're way more optimistic sounding than I am. Great is good news. I'm not sure I'd put great news, but
you'll have to edit that out later. You can replace that word. I'll say all right, here we go. Good. Now you can put that in there. All right. I am very optimistic. I'm always optimistic.
Yeah,
future's always bright.
That's why I love having you as a co-host. All right, guys, here is that interview with the supply chain panel. Lisa, Jonathan, Brad, thanks so much for joining me today.
Good to be here.
Thank you for having us.
So back in December, I moderated a panel at TurnCon that included Lisa and Brad regarding supply chain and labor challenges that we all felt may be impacting us this coming summer. Let's set the stage for everybody that may not have been there, but to just be kind of thinking of what was on everyone's mind at that point in time. You had the Omicron variant, which was only a couple of weeks old. I don't even know if they'd found a case in the U.S. at that point in time. Gas was, I think the average was $2.88 a gallon in Dallas, Texas, where we were at. Lisa, you're in Dallas. Have you filled up your car this week? And if so, what was the price?
Yeah, I took out a loan for that and was able to fill it up. It was $90, I think. So yeah, it's I don't even know, $4.79, $4.59, something like that.
Wow. Well, I've got to tell you, at least here in South Carolina, it's going down a little bit. Of course, I get mine at Sam's Club. So it was like $3.60, $3.64. But, outside of that, it's kind of anywhere from, $3.83 to, about $4.17 for regular. But, so here we are in the last week of March. We've got a Russian invasion of Ukraine that's in its, I think today we are recording this on, I believe, the 24th or 25th. And, that invasion's been going on for a month now. The world, with the exception of China, has cut off Russia from, I think, all commerce. And I can't find almond milk on a grocery store shelf to save my life. I've a new range over our one of those over the range microwaves for my kitchen that was supposed to be delivered 2 weeks ago, and I just received an email that Lowe's is saying that because of supply chain issues, it's going to be another 2 weeks before I get it. And the flooring guy that was supposed to start replacing my flooring next week just told me he's got to push that out another 2 more weeks because he's got to hire another crew in order to do it. So it just seems like this stuff is getting worse. And, all I can think about is what is summer term going to be like for student housing properties this summer? So Lisa and Brad, is the supply chain and labor supply issues getting worse or better since you guys sat on that panel back in December?
If you want me to start, thanks so much for having me. So, it's kind of a couple fold, right? The shipping time, shipping channels seem to be improving a little bit. What was taking about 85 days from port to door is now down to about 65. That's what we're seeing. So from a shipping perspective, it does seem to be getting better. The cost of containers is going down a teeny bit, not a lot, but a teeny bit. And then as it relates to labor, we're not in our install season yet, but we're already seeing that, in some cases, in double-digit increases on hourly labor out there in different markets. So, and people are still hard to find. So we don't see that improving too much.
Yeah, and we're kind of in the same line. The supply chain, I think it's becoming more predictable, and I think people are expecting long delays. So I'm not going to say it's
predictable. Predictable helps,
Yeah. You're right. So it's one of those. I'm not going to say it's gotten worse. I think, as Lisa mentioned, it's getting a little better. But I think people are now, you're kind of numb to it for how long it takes things to get there, and you're expecting things to be delayed. So you kind of build in some of those delays as you plan. But the labor supply, we actually see that getting worse. There's still a large shortage of workers out there. It's very hard to hire people. And we're seeing clients look at other options, even from a maintenance perspective, on how can I use my existing staff in different ways, such as, mobile maintenance or even outsourced maintenance. Yeah. So they're getting pretty creative how to handle these situations that the supply and the labor are being prevented to them.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, you weren't on that panel back in December because you were involved in a merger between Buyers Access and Omnia Partners. You're monitoring supply chain issues closer than I think anyone else I personally know. Would you say supply chain challenges are getting worse or better since December?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Wes, and thanks for having me. And much like Lisa and Brad have said, I wouldn't say it's worse, but it's evolving. And things aren't. I wouldn't say they're worse off. I think some things have gotten better, as Lisa said. The container flow is moving a little better. But the truth is it's two fronts. We still have supply chain issues that go back to raw materials, back to components that manufacturers need to finish making items. But then that labor component is still a factor too, because things aren't moving through the chain as fast. And, give you an example, certain companies like the appliance companies, they can't staff full shifts. So they might have less shifts working. And that's caused them to maybe produce only certain items. And we'll talk a little bit about that later too. But today, anything with technology, where if there's a computer chip in it, just like that microwave that you mentioned, yeah. Everything with a computer chip in it seems to be delayed right now because of all those gluts in the chain. But then even things like sheet metal, there's a big impact on the sheet metal market. So anything like your water heaters, your AC units that have sheet metal as a component, those are all impacted too.
What's driving it with the sheet metal?
Again, all those factors we just mentioned. So it goes right back to just getting the raw materials from point A to point B. Once the raw materials are where they need them, just having the shifts to turn that product and get it out. And then the supply chain factors with trucking and all that has had an impact on just getting things out once it's produced.
Yeah. Gotcha. So, Lisa, let's talk about furniture, because there are kind of two types of customers that you serve in student housing. One, you've got the new developments and the renovations, and those, on-time installs are absolutely critical, because if project is being delivered on August 1st and you've got folks moving in on August 15th, and you guys have basically got 2 weeks to get the furniture installed. If that doesn't happen and there's no beds for people to sleep on, that means the developer's having to put folks in hotels and who knows what else. And it's going to cause a lot of problems. So you've got that type of customer. And then the second type of customer is, your stabilized properties where, you're just switching out damaged furniture and the order count is much lower, than what you're going to see on a new development. Let's start with those new developments, because those customers, when we talked last time, I think you said most of them ordered, 18 months ago. Are those shipments going to arrive on time?
Exactly. There are two types. And on the new development side, it's a little bit different in that we ship that product from the port overseas directly. It goes to a warehouse in the local market. So that kind of speeds it up a little bit, right? Where we don't have to ship it because they're full containers. We can ship it directly to the warehouse that we partner with in that market, and then we deliver it from there. So that does kind of speed it up. It's funny. You said that, most people were ordering early, and they were. I'm still actually getting requests, not from new devs, although I was even a couple months ago where people didn't do that. And I'm still able to kind of get it on time. But at the end of the day, ordering early helps, and getting it straight from the port to the warehouse locally helps. Now, on the other side, which you mentioned, Wes, and you're right, that's kind of the more complicated side of our business, and it's a large percentage of what we do, and that is replacement pieces. So those aren't full container loads, and we have to mix those containers overseas with other product, and they actually have to ship to Dallas first and then ship out from there, from our Dallas warehouse. So what we did this year is we backed up our order deadline. What used to be get your order in by April 1st, this year became January 15th for July deliveries and February 15th for August deliveries. Now, again, I still get calls, and I will continue to get calls, but we also increased our inventory levels in our warehouse in Dallas so that we can pull from stock and not have to wait for that time. So it's complicated, but the two divisions sort of work a little bit differently than each other, if that makes sense. And to answer your question about on time, it darn sure better be on time. Yes, we feel like it'll be on time. We've created an incredibly large container tracking division, which we never had before a year ago, and we're watching it every minute.
So Lisa, let's continue to talk about those new delivery or those new development customers. You've got that first part of getting it into the port and then to the warehouse. Sounds like that's going pretty smooth. Mm-hmm. The other part is the labor install. Which one are you guys losing more sleep over? Having enough labor to complete the install on time, or actually getting the furniture in enough time to have the install guys get it in?
With student housing being so deadline driven, we are absolutely, we live and die by it, right? So we're absolutely certainly familiar with the stress of it every year, really. I do think that with the timing and the container tracking that we're doing, we're seeing that the product will be there on time and we'll be fine. And as far as the labor goes, we have 2 install supervisors that work for us directly on every single job. And then they get about half of the labor from our local warehouse where we house the product. And then the other half is temp labor. We're not seeing, yes, it's hard to find, but I guess there's a price for everything. They're raising these hourly rates amazingly high and are able to get more people because they're paying more money. So we haven't run into a situation where we can't get the labor, and I'm going to knock on wood or laminate, whatever I'm sitting at. I think we'll be okay. We've never had that issue before, but it just costs more money is the thing. And that's why you're seeing the increases in the install prices and things like that.
So I was going to say, obviously you've got the labor increases that you're just talking about. We've got the gas prices that we talked about earlier. That it doesn't look like, even though we've got a little bit of a dip right now in my area that I mentioned. What all the analysts are saying right now is that that's going to continue to climb going into the summer. You know, again, considering these orders were made, 18 months in advance, are you guys having to eat that cost? Or it sounds like, uh, I don't know if maybe this was agreed to in the purchase agreements, or if it's just something you're going back to the folks and saying, look, our prices are going up. We're going to have to, charge a fuel surcharge or something like that. How are you guys reacting to that? Or is it something that you guys are just having to eat?
So last year when the ocean freight, I'll get to gas in a minute, but last year when the ocean freight went up so much in cost, we really had long discussions about what to do. And at the end of the day, we felt like we were already contracted, even though our equity partners wanted to reach back out for additional funds. Paul and I just didn't think that was the morally right thing to do. So we ate it last year, and it was a tough year. This year, we did put in for the ocean freight as a surcharge. And if it comes down, we'll pay that back. And that's as it relates to the ocean freight, increase in containers. And it's an interesting question about gas, right? So we get updated pricing from our truck broker. We use third-party trucking. And we got updated pricing, I guess it was in January, that went effective into the web store and automatically priced. We've reached out to him just recently and said, are there going to be any additions for the gas? And at this point, he's saying there isn't. If there is, and I would assume it's around the corner, yeah, we will have to kind of negotiate that with our client base and see what the difference in dollars is as far as the freight goes. And that's trucking, because obviously these freight prices are just out of whack. But as of like Monday, I spoke to him. He's not changing pricing at this point.
Gotcha. Let's talk about turn furniture. Did I hear you say earlier that there's still folks putting orders in?
Yeah, and there will continue to be, Wes. It's crazy. I get panic calls, crying managers, June, July, August, freaking out, saying I didn't order enough. Or, if you think about it, it's really difficult to sort of forecast your replacement order in January, right? A lot of them did their walks in spring at spring break, and now they had to back it up to winter break, and things break between then and now. So that's why we increased our inventory levels. And I fill what I can fill, and people even will go as far as to take other colorways, even if we don't have their colorway in stock. We do everything that we can to help them out, and we stock a ton of beds, mattresses, bed frames. Those tend to be kind of the emergency items. I'm getting to a point where, as far as putting it in production, I'm almost done. I've got about a week to go because I need 60 days to produce it, and we're factoring 65 days across the water. So at this point, I'm going to be left with what I have in stock in the warehouse, which is great. And we've got stuff coming in, but it's just a potential of looking at it when they tell us what they need. But yeah, people, they'll go all the way through summer calling me, freaking out.
Yeah, I've probably been that person, to be honest.
I can't remember if you were, but yeah. Hopefully I helped you when you did.
Well, it's always that last minute thing.
Sure.
Something you take over a new property that's had really bad occupancy, and you
Sure.
may get a hold of it in November or December, and they've been dealing with 85% occupancy, and so you look at it and say, okay, well, maybe we'll get to 93, 94, and then all of a sudden you're sitting at the end of the leasing season, and you've almost got 100%. It's like, well, we didn't order enough furniture for this, so
yeah.
There's always those type of things, and then there's always stuff gets damaged in those summer months that no matter how often you waltz it during the year,
Exactly.
it doesn't keep that the last week of summer session, the party that had the Jello shots that end up all over the furniture that can't be pulled out, that you end up having to figure something out. So slip covers are always your best friend.
Yeah, we do a lot of those too.
Well, Jonathan, you've got your hand on the pulse of, kind of all the product categories. Let's kind of talk about the replacement items first. If I'm a maintenance supervisor at a property today, and I'm thinking about, what has to be purchased for the summer's turns, let's think blinds, appliances, plumbing fixtures, light fixtures, doors, potentially some cabinets and countertops. What can I expect when I go to log on with, any of the suppliers from Omnia Partners, so HD Supply? You can go through all of them that you guys work with, but what should I expect when I go to those portals to order those things, and are they going to be in stock?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll tell you, market by market, item by item, you are going to see out of stocks. It's going to be out there this year. Lisa spoke to it, with the furniture situation. If you're used to ordering a certain item and you can't get it, you may have to have a plan B. And I think that's, one thing we want to be mindful of is that, as I mentioned with those manufacturers right now, use appliances as an example. Whirlpool may have 30 different refrigerators that they typically manufacture. You may have one or two that are the ones that you primarily try to focus on for your unit. The truth of the matter is that they might not be producing that refrigerator at all right now. So no one can get it. So you first, want to think about, well, what are my standard items? Then communicate with that supply chain partner. That's really the biggest, best practice and best takeaway is reach out to them, have those discussions. That item that you're planning on, it could be a faucet, it could be a door lock, it could be something simple, but that manufacturer just might not be producing it right now. And they'll know those things. So reach out, start that communication process, have a plan B. So when you know that primary item that you're really focused on isn't available, that you've got something as a backup. So I think that's really important to know. And as you mentioned, at Omnia Partners, we have a number of supply chain partners out there. So if you do need someone to help look across all of those supply chains, we're here to help with that. But more importantly, if you just communicate with your supplier, you should be able to get a lowdown on where there's going to be a shortage and really plan accordingly and have that plan B in place.
Is there, as you're kind of keeping the pulse on all this and helping folks, source it across multiple outlets, is there a particular supplier that you see that's doing a better job of it than anybody else?
They're all working very hard to keep up. And I think category by category, supplier by supplier, there may be some that have strengths, but again, it varies even by market. So there's not any one simple answer. But the truth is that by keeping your eyes open and planning ahead, then we have a chance to really circumvent any of those potential concerns.
Gotcha. So let's talk about supplies. I'm thinking, like caulk and paint, copper tubing, PVC. We used to get by with placing those orders about, 4 weeks before turn. So we have the chance to receive it, catalog it in the maintenance shop. Do we need to be ordering those things earlier?
I'll tell you, Wes, I've been in this industry, supporting this industry for almost 30 years. And there was never a time until today that I would say, buy in advance and store it. And we've, as a child of the 80s and the 90s, we grew up in this just-in-time inventory world. And the truth is that we're really seeing some impact on that. So when we think about the commodities, there are, again, as I mentioned, some raw material shortages. So in the case of paint, it's not that there won't be paint. It's just that you might not have exactly the brand or the sheen of paint you want, right? It may be a little different grade of paint that you need to look at. But the way to get around that, the way to circumvent that is to buy in advance. And there are a number of storage solutions that are available. So if you have a small shop and you don't have a lot of space for things, again, reach out to those supply chain partners. There's a variety of storage solutions available to help with that. But the truth is, for the first time in my career, I can say, yes, you may want to look into buying stuff in advance to know that you're going to have it in stock, because this is a really unique cycle that we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for those property managers, Mitch, that's hearing that, if you're on a fiscal cycle with your budget, of an August to July or September to August, there's always that period of, typically most groups are August to July. And so You could put that stuff in July, and if you're on a cash basis, you're not paying that out until August, and it's on the next fiscal cycle. So if you didn't budget those things in June and July and have them budgeted, or planning to put those in the budget for August, talk with your accounting department and see if that if that needs to be accrued differently, or exactly what, because I'm with you, and I'm hearing from other folks, their stuff that they would typically, order late June, early July, they're going to be putting in May. So makes a lot of sense. What else are you seeing that, student housing operators need to be prepared for going into the summer, be it turn or anything else?
Yeah, well, I'll start, by saying that, Lisa, hats off to her crew and her team for being able to keep those fuel surcharges down. But I do know that a number of suppliers are going to start to have to institute those in some places. So you want to be mindful of that because, Wes, you mentioned the budget, right? Because that may be an aha moment for some. I think one way to mitigate that, though, is to be mindful of really, placing that large order. Instead of having multiple small orders, to kind of keep control of that. As we've all kind of hit on a little bit here, that commodity pricing is also going up. So we think about the shortages and we think about the scarcity of items, that also forces those prices up. So things like that, the sheet metal that we talked about, that's causing some inflation for some of those items. So be mindful of that too, because what you had maybe estimated for some budgeting, may have to be revisited. And then along with everything that's going on with these shortages, I did want to let the group know too that HVAC regulations are going to be changing again. And in 2023, there's a higher level of efficiency needed. And what's going to happen this summer is that many of the manufacturers are going to start to retool their factories to start making the new standards for that equipment. And if you're not schooled up on this yet, if you haven't heard about this yet, reach out to your supplier partners. Get aware of what's going on. The regulations that are changing are going to happen a little differently this time. And especially for those in the southern part of the country, if you have equipment that you store on hand and you like to have a few AC units on hand in case something goes wrong, you really need to be mindful of when those need to be installed based on the new regulations. And if folks need help with that, they can definitely reach out to us at Omnia Partners, but definitely reach out to your supply chain partners, and they'll help keep you in the loop on what's changing in HVAC as well.
Gotcha. And you said they're going to start retooling those factories this summer?
Many manufacturers are, and that's going to create a little bit of havoc in the marketplace if you haven't planned ahead.
Gotcha. So, talking about budgets, Brad, your company provides several software applications that give operators a lot of insight into facility management and expense analysis. Customers can also, use it to order products and service from the marketplace. What is it that your technology is telling your customers or giving them insight into when it comes to cost analysis and how their budgets may be impacted this coming summer and even into next year?
Yeah, it is an interesting time with the budgets when you think of when they were created, and here we are, many months later, executing to them. So what our software does, it's a platform supporting maintenance, turn, and renovations, right? So what we allow them to do is plan out their turns, but along with that, obviously, is your purchasing of product and your purchasing of services. So yeah, I think everybody got the hint to purchase early. Working with their suppliers, they can purchase early through our system to get it into the supply chain to get it there. With the service providers, with them, giving them, heads up on, when things will occur is obviously giving them value. But again, like you're experiencing with your flooring, they're finding they need more crews. There's more turnover now. So, that's a struggle for them. So what the system will show them, it'll show them that budget versus actuals. And in today's market, it's a tremendous variance that they're seeing. So there's been a lot of reworking of budgets based on as they learn from the suppliers.
Are you able to give a little bit of a percentage of what that they're typically seeing right now?
Well, on appliances, they're seeing a 75 to 80% increase,
Wow.
from their budget to what, the actual costs are. And, it's one that, we always tell them, work closely with your suppliers, not only from what you need, but also be flexible on what options can be. Because as Jonathan mentioned, not everything's going to be available there that you want. You may have to go with an alternative to do that. The system will give them that insight when they go to order, if something's going to be discontinued or if there's a back order and how long that'll be, so they can plan accordingly. But, we're finding now, even as they come up closer and closer to delivery, as Jonathan mentioned, the suppliers are working hard. They're all working hard to get an understanding of this supply chain to help their clients. But there's still that instance that comes up that product's not available. We got to go to plan B or plan C. So it's important to have that flexibility as you're going into the execution side of it, especially when you get to the service providers there, again, with the crews and the timing and then their material that they need. It is definitely a challenge out there.
So, Brad, let's continue on the budgets here for a minute, because one of my biggest complaint with the property management systems that we use, be it multifamily or in student housing, there's not a good budget module. There just isn't. And that's something that I believe you guys provide that within your system as well, where it's not just an approval process, but can people actually create a budget within your system?
Well, you can load budgets within the system that
Gotcha.
you can then compare, obviously, to your purchasing and your services. Many of them will leverage the accounting system and create the budget there, and then we'll download it, or they'll create it in Excel and we'll upload it for them. So they have that ability, and they can iterate it, which we're seeing. As we progress through the quarters, they do end up iterating as they learn more, as they see prices get conveyed back to them from their suppliers and service providers.
Gotcha. So as they're going through that budget creation process, and like I said, most student housing fiscal years are in August to July. And I kind of want to put this out to the group, but what kind of increases? I mean, we've got the most inflation that we've seen in 40 years, and that's, and I'm amazed. Like, I mentioned the whole thing with at the beginning with, being able to find almond milk. That's our family. We don't drink cow milk. And so, as the past few weeks have gone by and it's just harder and harder to find that, I'm looking to find out what's behind that. And, there was a whole list that came out in November of, hey, here are some plant-based foods that you're going to, probably end up having issues with. And almond milk was certainly one of those. So, but the other thing that I'm looking at too is the price has gone up significantly as well. And, so I'm thinking again about these student housing providers who are, actively in budget season. If they've got that fiscal year of August to July, what's a right number? I mean, you guys are all seeing this. I mean, what's a right number across kind of these different expense categories?
That's a tough one to throw a single number out across all the categories. As Jonathan was mentioning, they vary substantially, but they're all struggling. But even beyond that, we're seeing, clients look at, hey, how can I, extend the life of these high value items? How can I repair that broken desk or that table, instead of buying new, because I just can't get one in time, or I can't get the one I want. And then they're also, they also want to see across multiple suppliers. They're asking us to bring in other suppliers that we have relationships with so they can create relationships with, so they can compare. So when they can order within our marketplace, they can see across. And it's not only price these days, but it's also fulfillment. It's that relationship. Can I get it fulfilled? So it's a tough one to put a percent, growth upon a budget in this environment, but it's also getting creative on how am I going to live within my budget?
Yeah. Jonathan, are you able to drill down a little bit more and say, hey, in this particular, I know you mentioned earlier with with appliances, some people are seeing a 80% increase over their budget, not 80% increase in the actual product. Are you able to give any clearer insight into that?
Yeah, I wish I could, Wes. I think, Brad made a great point about iterations of budgets, right? I think it's a good time to be nimble. It's a good time to keep your options open. I think if you're in the process of budgeting, you want to give yourself some leeway and some flexibility. And Brad made a great point too about being creative and really understanding where are those other levers that I can pull to help me stay in budget. The truth is all the suppliers are working hard to maintain those prices. Lisa's company is a great example of that, where they honored those contracts. They're holding back those other charges that are coming, but not everyone's going to be able to do that. So it's really just a matter of keeping your eyes open and then taking those proactive steps where you can to be creative and make those adjustments where you can make them.
Well, and guys, I heard something recently that I think this week about, record high rents. I mean, at the end of the day, the end user is going to be the one to pay that. Rents are going to raise. And I don't even remember what the number was. The average rent in Dallas, it was really, really, really high. And the average home sales, I think the national average is now 500,000 for a house. I mean, it just, at the end of the day, you're going to get your almond milk, Wes, but you're going to pay a lot for it, right?
Trust me, it's better than dealing with the heartburn and indigestion later.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So and again, I mean, are you guys plugging in any kind of percentages for stuff that you're now bidding out for 2023, 2024, Lisa?
So yeah, I'm sticking with the ocean ship freight surcharge. I'm keeping that in there. And as far as increase on pricing, no, I'm just at the end of the quote. I'm just saying I'm giving it an expiration date and saying reforecast, because again, the factories don't give us price increases until the fourth quarter. So I see a lot of clients, especially on the new dev side, putting in contingencies now too, where I didn't really see that before. So they have some contingency dollars built into their budget so that, if any category sees a huge increase, they can draw from that money.
Gotcha. So, last question, and kind of thinking about the future of things, because this is what is keeping, operators and owners up at night, as they think about kind of the geopolitical atmosphere and what's going on. You've got this thing in Ukraine. It's teetering on, trying to bring more countries into it. And if that happens, and this thing stages out, for a long period of time, things could get pretty hot. We're seeing, China giving a lot of support to Russia. We're now seeing India, telling the West, look, just stop trying to pressure us. And at the same time, they don't seem to be slowing their discussions down with their neighbors to the north with China. And so, I look at Asia. I mean, so much of this stuff is manufactured in Asia. Lisa, you'd mentioned previously to me that you guys pulled out of China a long time ago, and you're now in Vietnam for the most part with manufacturing. I just want to get your opinion. One, kind of, if this thing escalates and relationship with some of these, specifically with China, ends up causing more issues in the Pacific, where we're going to have more issues with getting things that are being shipped. Lord forbid there's an invasion of Taiwan that ends up happening. These are the kind of things that are keeping folks up at night, especially when it comes to the development side of things within our industry. Is there, when it comes to the manufacturers, is there a big focus on, trying to find alternatives? Lisa, you mentioned you guys are already in Vietnam. Or you guys you hearing from other manufacturers that they're trying to bring things more stateside or in South America? Just want to put that question out there, because I don't know that we really hear that a lot in the news about, what these companies are thinking about doing as far as their manufacturing facilities.
Yeah, so I mean, I spoke to the furniture side of it as well, and like I said, we're already up and running in Colombia. And with all of the SKUs, Wes, with all the SKUs that we have, it's just not an overnight thing, right? We've got to
Right.
be able to have them build it, spec it, let us approve it. We've spent lots of time. We have a team over there that's managing, ramping those up, and I really believe that that's what we, as manufacturers have to do. We have to get out of those hot zones. Vietnam has been good. We did have some strikes a few years ago. I don't remember when that was, but that occurred. But you're absolutely right. This world situation is extremely scary, and you just have to react in the moment. And I want to get out of Asia, and I would love to be able to build in the USA. It's just not as easy as it sounds. And even the manufacturers of specifically furniture that claim to build in the USA, they're getting components from Asia, and
Yeah.
it's not. It sounds good in a marketing campaign, but it's really not wholly true, right? I mean, they're assembling it here, not building it here, right? Because all the components are coming from other places. So it's a very complicated, tricky situation for sure.
Yeah. Any thoughts from the other guys here?
Lisa covered it very good. Yep.
Well, guys, I appreciate it so much. I know this thing is, it's kind of this, slowly evolving thing as we're able to read the tea leaves a little bit clearer each day as to what kind of impact we're going to have return. So I don't know, maybe we'll have another update between now and sometime around early summer. But wanted to, again, just thank you for the time that you guys gave for this. I think our audience is better for it. Any other last words of advice or wisdom you want to impart upon our listeners?
I guess it's always that, take the lessons learned from this year and prepare for next year. Plan ahead and, look at your budgets and be creative.
Yeah, just keep communicating with your suppliers. Just keep that communication line open and then keep asking those questions.
Yeah, 100% agree. Communication is key. And, I think as a supplier, we're accountable to be sure to communicate to our clients early and often as to the situations. But Wes, these podcasts are great. And I think what I've learned mostly today is that I need to beef up my office so that it looks as cool as yours. I don't know.
Well, yeah, if you need any camera suggestions or mic suggestions, just let me know.
I will do it.
Going through it. So.
I will do it.
Well, guys, thanks so much, and we'll talk soon.
Okay,
right,
thanks, Wes.
Thanks a lot.
Take care, everybody.
Well, a big thanks again to those guys for spending the time to enlighten us, give us a little bit of behind the scenes look of these types of conversations that are happening in their offices. I really appreciate their time with that. And I think it really goes to something I want to dig in a little bit more, with you, Ken, is it does take a village. It takes all of us, takes, over and over again. I think Jonathan was talking about, talking to your suppliers, communicating with your suppliers. And that's really, we can't be afraid. We can't put that off. We can't even be afraid of bad news that may come from those conversations. But I think having those conversations and staying in constant communication is the key. And we're actually providing something here at Student Housing Insight to help, enhance those conversations a little bit. And that's our new app that we just released called SHI Connect. If you go to your app store, you'll see it there, or in the Google Play Store, you'll see it there. Just search SHI Connect. But it is a way for us as industry professionals, as well as the folks that are on the product and service supply side, to have some of these conversations. And I think that's and not just a yeah, you can have private conversations, but you can have public conversations just like any other social media platform that's out there. But this is, it's all student housing professionals, right? And so definitely want to, I know we've been kind of teasing that in some previous podcast episodes, but it's now April. So
and it's live.
Yeah, it's live. I think this podcast will come out. This particular episode will come out right before April 1st, but April 1st is the public release date. But if you're listening to this beforehand, you can still search it and find it, and you'll just have to wait a day or so before you're actually able to get credentials, but you can go ahead and download it. So yeah, excited about that. And you guys have got some fantastic content that you're providing on that as well. It can also be found at your website. You want to tell them a little bit about the blog?
Yeah, sure. So I'll be able to give another shout out for the Chic app that you've got going for you there. Who knew that Wes was a fashion aficionado, but here we are. But it is a great app. We've just started it, and I know the group is excited about some of the content that we can start contributing to it, and I promise that we'll put some content out too about the supply chain portion as kind of a follow up to this podcast. But on the Omnia partner side, Jonathan did mention that there are a number of resources. You can go to the supplier directly. You can contact us at Omnia Partners, and we can get you in touch with the folks that we work with and our internal resources to help navigate some of these areas as well. But one thing I've found that is very, very helpful is our marketing group does a great job of keeping our website up to date, and the product development team is constantly putting new information out there within our blog. So if you check out omniapartners.com, if you go to the private sector and then go over to contacts, and you can choose the blog piece, or if you like to just type in, if you're one of these URL people that like to just key in a nice long phrase, you can go to https:// private.omniapartners.com/blog. And that'll take you right to the private sector blog, which gives you page after page after page of updates from how to navigate the supply chain crisis, how to find resources in times of need, things like that. And just to reiterate, you were talking about group purchasing earlier, but not only do we marry up the supplier people along with our members, which are the multifamily and student housing owner operators, but we also can help with better category and spend management. So oftentimes, especially during the pandemic, it wasn't all about toilet paper and hand sanitizer, although there was a lot of that. It was more on the lines of, how can I find an alternative to the products I normally buy because I can't get them right now. They're out of stock. And can I go somewhere else? So we help direct a lot of people in those areas and advise them how to get there. And oftentimes we were actually holding hands and getting them across to those new suppliers or those alternative sources while their other suppliers are playing catch up. So all those things kind of come into play, when working with a group purchasing organization, because if there's a way to help, if it has the word procurement or purchasing in it, we're going to be there to do our level best to help you out. And if we can't, the good news is we're very honest and transparent, and we'll tell you. And at a minimum, we can get you in touch with, if not one of our supplier partners, a supplier in the world that may be able to help them out. So, yeah,
I can actually vouch for that. Not since the merger, but I trust you that it's all the same. But there were a couple of projects in 2021 where I said, all right, I gotta, this is from properties I was providing asset management to, and even some transactions where the buyer was saying, hey, we want to go in and add TVs, to a property that didn't have any TVs. And was able to reach out with one phone call to you guys and get some pricing right away on that. So
yeah, glad to help. And it's expanded. I mean, we've got even more categories, and it's expanded in the whole realm of IT or multifunction copier equipment through Ricoh and Konica Minolta. I mean, there's just a number of number of ways you can go now. Office supplies are obviously a fun thing to try to hold in student housing, and so we're always helpful in those areas too. So anything you can buy or a service from, there's a likelihood that we can assist. And again, we're not trying to do a shameless plug. A group purchasing organization is there for you for that purpose. And so I encourage you to seek out the one that meets the best needs for you.
Well, Ken, I appreciate it so much. If folks want to follow Ken, you can find him on LinkedIn. You can also find him at the SHI Connect app. He's been one of our beta testers for that. So I could tell you he's on there and active, and he'll pass along all the information that he knows that you can find of benefit. So again, thanks so much, Ken, for helping put this panel 2.0 together, as well as serving as co-host, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, happy to do it, Wes. I really hope that your listeners out there are able to derive a good bit from it. And you know what? If they have any questions at all, reach me out there on the app. I'd be glad to help. If I can't help them, I'll find someone who can.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Ken. Take care,
guys.
All right,
take care.